Okay, so today we are talking about adding and subtracting fractions, and I am going to draw for you my favorite way to kind of visualize this, and that is with a shiny little apple and a really nice ripe orange. Okay, so you've heard the phrase, it's like comparing apples to oranges, like apples and oranges, they just aren't the same thing. So you can't compare an apple to an orange. You also can't add apples and oranges. Like if you're like, I guess you could if you were asking how much fruit you have, but just for the sake of this, we're not going to add apples and oranges. Okay, so in math, okay, we don't add apples and oranges. And why do I tell myself that? Well, because when you're talking about fractions, okay, and you have fractions like 1/2, okay, plus 1/2, okay, that's like having two apples, right? That's two halves. 1/2 plus 1/2 is just two halves, okay? So it's just like saying you've got one apple plus another apple equals two apples, okay? So fractions are just like apples, okay, or oranges, okay? But if you have 1/2 plus 1/4, okay, you see what you got there? You've got a nice juicy apple, okay, and then you've got an orange, okay, and we don't add apples and oranges, okay, so we're not going to do 1/2 plus 1/4 that way. We have to do something first, okay, and what we have to do is find the least common multiple, or the lowest common denominator, for 1/2 and 1/4, okay, and the way we do that, I tend to like to write these vertically at this point, okay, so 1/2 plus 1/4, okay. What is the lowest common denominator? Well, if I make my little T-chart, if I make 1 for 2, and I go 2, 4, right? So I'm already to this number. So I can just kind of go with that and say, you know what? My lowest common denominator is going to be fourths. And I'm going to rewrite this 1/4 over here, so I now have a second column. Okay, so I've got, and how did I get to a fourth? 2 times 2, whatever I do to the denominator, I do for the numerator. So 1 times 2 is 2. So now I've got 2/4 plus 1/4. Okay, and 2/4 is the same as 1/2. So I'm doing the same number sentence, but now instead of apples and oranges, what do I have, friends? That's right, I got apples and apples. Okay. Okay. So 2/4 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. And over here, I could have done the same thing. 2/4 plus 1/4 is 3/4. Okay, so as long as, so you can't add fractions. Let's just write this little rule for ourselves. You can't add or subtract fractions unless the denominators match. And that's just a rule, okay? And I realized that I called this adding and subtracting fractions, and in all of my examples here, we're adding. So right here at the bottom, I'm just going to give you an example. If I had, let's see, 5/8 minus 3/8, okay? I got apples and apples, right? Still apples and apples. Why is it apples and apples? Because they're both 8s, okay? 5/8 and 3/8, apples and apples. Well, if I had 5 apples minus 3 apples, that would just be 2 apples. So 5/8 minus 3/8 equals 2/8. And we'll talk about simplifying that at another time.